Junius Dean had been talking to me about his client, Anastasia Grafton Byrne. She was worth over $50 million. Let's go over what you just told me, Mr. Dean. Anastasia Grafton Byrne has bought herself a medieval castle in the middle of the Balkans, right? I guess she intends to live there like a feudal queen. I can't see anything wrong with that.
Perhaps I can clarify our fears a bit more. Mind you, we have no proof, only our feelings.
I understand.
The castle was owned by Prince Bruzova and his daughter Zia. When the negotiations were complete, I made a trip personally to check all the details and final papers. The prince struck me as most peculiar, so I investigated. The prince's family goes back 700 years, and its history is filled with stories of violence. Quite common, I dare say, for the times.
I dare say.
Recently, in the village where Mrs. Grafton Byrne purchased the castle, there have been violent deaths. This newspaper clipping mentions werewolves. Now, of course, Mr. Lanyard, I know that sounds ridiculous, but we are really worried. The prince is a proud and ruthless man, and frankly, we're afraid for our client's safety.
Why don't you tell her?
It's obvious you don't know Anastasia Grafton Byrne. A statement like that would only intrigue her more.
What is your main fear? Werewolf reported in Balkans. Belgrade. Like something out of the pages of the Dark Ages, recent reports have reached this city of a gigantic werewolf, killing and terrorizing the peasants in the neighborhood of the ancient Bruzova Castle. Where's Mrs. Grafton Byrne now?
Entertaining the prince and his daughter at her villa on the Riviera. But in 3 days, Mrs. Grafton Byrne will leave to take possession of her castle.
How do I meet her?
My office will handle that by cable. To all intents and purposes, you'll be an emissary of this office. Mrs. Grafton Byrne will welcome you as a guest.
When do you want me to leave?
We've assumed that your passport is in order. Therefore, your airline ticket is for tonight.
Goodbye, Mr. Dean.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Thanks. That night, I took a plane for the Riviera via Paris. Mrs. Byrne welcomed me as a guest and announced in the same breath that we were leaving by ship to claim her castle. Several hours later, we were in the ship's cocktail lounge. All through dinner, much had been said about nothing. Anastasia Grafton Byrne was a real character. Prince Bruzova and his daughter Zia struck me as weird. Maybe not dangerous, but certainly far from normal.
Charming. Perfectly, perfectly charming.
Yes, it is indeed, madame.
Good luck, everybody.
You've been in the United States recently, Mr. Lanyard?
Oh, yes. Quite recently.
I have never been there.
Oh. Wouldn't you like to go?
No, never.
You see, Mr. Lanyard, my daughter and I are appalled by your modern civilization. Your age of speed, radio, television, and atomic destruction.
What can one do? It's the age we live in.
It's not the age we live in, Mr. Lanyard. At home, my daughter and I live in the 13th century, as our ancestors did. We've permitted no change.
Shall we walk on deck, Prince Bruzova?
It was a pleasure.
Mr. Lanyard.
Yes?
I am very sensitive to people. I read them as a sailor reads the sky and knows what to expect of the morrow. In you, I see danger and feel fear.
Fear?
Perhaps not fear, but apprehension. Why should this be?
I'm sure I don't know, Your Highness.
You may call me Zia.
Zia could be in her own way perhaps deadly. And if she committed murder, I figured it would be in a manner popular 500 years ago.
How much of my country do you know?
Very little.
Ours is a strange country. Habits unchanged. Building centuries old. We have successfully withstood changes for over 2 centuries.
I wonder if 2 centuries without change could best be described as decay.
You're as my father so often said about the British and Americans. A nation of people always in a hurry to make changes before full and careful investigation.
I have no wish to cause or make a change.
It is too bad you're not of noble blood, but I can help you. Soon the world will again belong to 1 or 2 families in each country. All that has been ours and stolen will be returned. Rivers, cities, and estates. Do you understand, Michael?
Yeah, I understand.
You may kiss me. Now.
Your Highness.
I gave you leave to call me Zia and to kiss me. Yet you mark me and my title.
Forgive me, Your Highness.
I want you to say my name. Say Zia.
Zia.
Again.
Zia.
Good. As penance for your rudeness, you shall say my name 100 times in your sleep tonight. When you wake, you will remember you had to obey my command.
Won't that get a trifle monotonous? What was that for? A reminder of werewolves and vampires?
Don't you believe in vampires and werewolves, Michael?
Should I?
You should believe. You must.
I kept remembering the promise I'd made to Dean. I knew that Bruzova and his daughter lived in the darkness of time, but I wasn't sure they were actually dangerous. I decided to invite Mrs. Byrne to dinner, alone. I figured I might learn something, but it didn't work out that way. After dinner, she invited me to play at her favorite game, checkers. I couldn't very well say no.
My dear husband played checkers till the day he died. I like a game before retiring. It's so soothing. I must teach the prince to play. Do you think I'm crazy?
Of course not.
All my life I've wanted to be a queen. Nothing strange about that. Most girls do. But having a great deal of money doesn't help, you know. What good is a fortune? You can't rule anybody or anything. You can't make laws. You can't issue proclamations.
Yes, I suppose it is rather bitter.
Bitter? It's tragic. Am I crazy to want this great adventure? No. It's the sanest thing I've ever done. Did you know that I can't really purchase the prince's castle and kingdom?
Oh. I thought you had.
Well, actually, I have. But there's a law in his family that nothing can be sold to an outsider for longer than the length of their lifetime. Oh, Mr. Lanyard, isn't it exciting? Isn't it romantic?
Is it? Did you agree to that?
Not yet, but I will, of course. Well, after all, you're representing my law firm. You might read this over. I know how upset poor Dean would be if I should do anything without his approval.
The letter simply stated that upon Mrs. Grafton Byrne's death, the property would revert to the Bruzova family. It wasn't just a document. It was an invitation to death. Mrs. Grafton Byrne was in great danger. Aren't you in the wrong stateroom?
Come in. I would like to have a little talk with you.
Oh? What about?
About you. When I met you first at Mrs. Grafton Byrne's villa, I didn't know that you were to come with us to my country. I should have been informed.
Why?
Because I would have prevented it. Uninvited guests are not welcome at my castle.
Your castle, Bruzova?
Yes. My castle.
I understood you'd sold the place to Mrs. Grafton Byrne.
That's possibly so. But in fact, I've sold her nothing. The castle and the country are mine, just as they were for my ancestors for 700 years. Oh, I may accept some money. I may even sign some ridiculous documents. But I can no more sell my sacred heritage than I can sell my soul. It is, however, hers for a lifetime.
You know what this is beginning to sound like?
No, I don't.
You understand the technique, all right. Perhaps not the words. In America, we call it playing both ends against the middle. I figured Bruzova would make another move. I only hoped he wouldn't catch me flat-footed. It's not perfume exactly. What is it?
Oil of verbena, concentrated.
Do you use it?
No,
And why do you carry it in a flask?
because it suits me to do so. Give it to me, please.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'll turn in. Any commands for tonight, Your Highness?
Good night, Michael.
Good night. Then the boat trip ended, and we started for the castle by automobile. The castle sat on a cliff overlooking the whole desolate valley. And then I saw something I hadn't expected, a brute of a dog, and I began to wonder.
Boris, I missed you. Hope you get enough exercise, hmm?
Oh, isn't it wonderful? It's beyond words. Is there a throne room, Prince?
Madame, this is not a royal castle.
Oh. Well, that'll be taken care of later. Oh, isn't it gorgeous, Michael?
Yeah.
Well, come along. Come along. I want to see everything right now.
Madame, it will take at least 3 days to see the whole estate. I suggest we start tomorrow. I'm a little bit tired. Take Boris to my room. I have so much to say to him. Dinner will be served at 8:30. And now you will all excuse me.
Boris is a very handsome dog.
Boris is like all aristocrats. Very handsome, very intelligent, and very loyal.
You know, I just can't believe that this belongs to me. I just can't. I mean, isn't it exciting, Michael?
Yes. I hope it won't be too exciting. The prince had quietly sat through dinner, and Zia wore the expression of someone who might have lived 1,000 years ago. Mrs. Grafton Byrne hadn't stopped talking about her newly acquired little kingdom. I kept wondering about all of them. And Boris. It was like living in a medieval nightmare. And I wondered where it would all lead.
Tell me, Prince Bruzova, how many people live in my little kingdom?
There are 65 families, totaling 334 people.
How too divine. Little me controlling all those people.
Except for one matter, madame.
One matter, Prince?
You have not as yet signed our agreement. I feel that my ancestors may become offended.
Are you referring to the paper that says this castle reverts to your family after the death of Mrs. Grafton Byrne?
Mr. Lanyard, you said that in a manner that sounds ominous.
I apologize. Is there any other way?
As a paper, it is unimportant. But as a family tradition, it is vital.
Unfortunately, in my excitement, I forgot to tell you and the prince that I misplaced the paper. But don't spoil my first evening here by talking about papers or death. We can have another one prepared, and I shall sign it.
As you wish, madame.
I'm afraid I must ask you to take Boris outside. I don't like dogs in the house.
Madame, Boris belongs in the castle. His room is next to my own bedchamber.
His room? Is it a large one?
Quite large. I think he finds it very comfortable.
I don't like it at all.
It is useless to discuss it, madame. Boris stays.
Forgive me for intruding at this late hour, Prince Brzova, but I just heard of your return.
Good evening, Father Stefan. Please meet my guests, Mrs. Grafton Byrne, Mr. Lanyard.
Prince Brzova, I must talk to you about the people in the village.
The villagers? Surely, Father, you know my law. Any problem concerning my people is discussed each morning at 11 o'clock.
But Prince Brzova...
Enough has been said, Father. For 700 years, the rule has applied. Let us continue to observe it.
But Prince Brzova, they are now my people.
Your people?
Yes, Father. I have bought this castle, its lands, and all its occupants from Prince Brzova.
I'm sure, Father, that Mrs. Grafton Byrne is willing to change the old rule.
Yes, Father. And now, what about my villagers?
Madame, may I ask you to wait until tomorrow?
Prince Brzova, this is my first deed as a queen. I do not wish to postpone it.
Terror stalks the night. Throats are torn. Men and women bar their doors and dread their shadows. There's fear instead of happiness.
Father, how long has this condition existed?
The history of the Brzova is that the wolves have killed every summer for 700 years.
Do you believe that history, Father? Werewolves and vampires?
My son, I believe in nothing but God. But my people are in terror, and I implore and pray that an answer be given.
What is heritage cannot be changed.
Throughout the evening, I had the feeling that something was going to happen. I felt as though we were all sitting on a keg of dynamite. And when the servant entered, I knew that trouble had arrived. I recognized him as an old man who had defiantly raised his fist as we drove to the castle. He was dead. I recognized something else, a scent like aromatic weed. I'd smelled it before, and not too long ago. His throat is torn.
Take him away immediately.
I will go with him and pray.
As you will, Father. I will arrange for the burial.
Oh, the poor, poor man. It's terrible, terrible. Michael, how do you think it happened?
Probably a wildcat.
I doubt that.
You always sound so definite. Really, Michael, I wonder about you.
If I were you, I'd stop wondering and start thinking. When I leaned over that poor devil, I distinctly smelled verbena.
Do you mean to infer that there is a connection between my verbena and...
And death. As I told you, Zia, you better start thinking.
I warned them all not to leave their homes at night. Do what that fool paid for his stupidity was his life.
Brzova, is Boris still in his room?
Of course.
Has he been outside at all this evening?
Boris is never allowed outside the castle grounds.
Is there any reason why I can't go and look at him right now?
And why do you want to do that?
I want to see if there's blood on his head or around his mouth.
Mr. Lanyard, if I understand you correctly, you offered me an insult that no Brzova could endure.
What about the dog?
I forbid it. Come, dear.
What's the matter with them? I wanted them to stay with me until I felt secure here, but I don't know now.
Have you signed that new paper yet?
No, but I will.
Don't. That paper's your death warrant. Both Brzova and his daughter are mentally ill. They're guilty of many murders.
Oh, no.
I headed for my room. I looked for the gun I'd hidden, but it was gone. Then Brzova and Zia joined me, and I noticed the prince was holding my gun, and he wasn't kidding.
Come. This way. I suppose you know why this must be.
Because I discovered a connection between verbena and torn throats.
Not exactly. There are many traditions in our family. You have offended me several times. For this alone, you must die. Just as a peasant was doomed for having raised his fist at me the other day.
Have you decided how I'm going to die?
I've always chosen Boris as my executioner. I told him very carefully to follow the scent of verbena. The rest you already know. But I've decided to be very sporting with you. Zia will put a few drops of verbena on your throat. Then we'll let you out of the castle. Give you a 5-minute start before we release Boris from his room.
Well, that is very sporting of you.
Boris enjoys a good chase. Zia?
You should not have treated me with such contempt, Michael. I wish I could be there when Boris finds you.
Boris? And you, Father? What's the meaning of this?
Prince Brozova, you are a man of evil. I know how you have used this senseless brute to kill, to terrorize. And God gave me the answer. Boris must die. The people will be free. No more terror.
Hold him! Down, boys! Down! Here, throw the flask away.
You're responsible for her death. You killed Boris.
I'd killed Boris, but not soon enough to save Zia. She was dead. And as I looked at the prince, I figured wherever he had gone, it was too good for him.